start first with weed identification, and I'm not going to try and turn everybody into taxonomists tonight. Let's just talk in general. You know your bittercress, you know your spurge, you know the major weeds that are a problem in your nursery right now. But you need to also be aware there are weeds that are spreading in our industry very rapidly. When you buy plants in from the deep south, from the west coast, weeds are moving with nursery stock. And so we're seeing all kinds of new weeds moving in nursery stock. You buy it from the west coast, you could get willow herb. You purchase from the deep south, you could get something like Eclipta coming in your liners. You get some plants from the Netherlands, you could get another weed. So how do you identify these weeds? Well, you need resources. We've have a publication called Weeds of Container Nurseries, available through the North Carolina Nursery and Landscape Association. And if you're interested in getting a copy of that, they can be purchased through the association. Phone number there is 919-816-9119. Or the simplest thing is just get online, search for the Nursery North Carolina Nursery Association website, and that's the easiest way to find it. With this publication, you'll have color pictures, you'll have information about all of the major weeds, but also quite a few of the newly introduced species that you need to watch for. And we don't expect you to become a plant taxonomist and know every plant, but what I do hope you will do is learn to recognize the ones that you've got. And when you get something new, take a look at a resource like this and find out whether or not that's something of major concern or not. If it's something that's controlled by your standard herbicide and weed management programs, fine, don't worry too much about it. But if you get one in that is really difficult to control, you might want to jump right on that with an aggressive sanitation program to keep it from spreading in your nursery. So early detection and rapid response. All right, once you know your weeds, we've got to develop a weed management plan, and that weed management plan is going to start with sanitation. I think sanitation is an underappreciated tool in nursery weed management. Sanitation part one is to prevent the introduction of those new weeds. Look for sources of the weeds. When you get liners in and they're infested with weeds, and you're going to get weeds with your liners when you buy them in. Okay, bittercress, spurge, you know you've got them already. Not a big deal. You know that the liners are infested, so you've got to have a weed management program in place to control those weeds. But of course, you want to watch and see if you're getting new weeds coming in with these liners. Okay. Identify other sources in your nursery. Are you reusing your pots and flats? That's a source of weed seed. Are you reusing substrate? If you've got a big pile of substrate that you're going to grind and compost, that is a huge source of weed seeds. But the liners are by far the primary vehicle for getting new weeds of concern into the industry. We know about picking up things like bittercress, oxalis, but if you've ordered any herbaceous perennials out of the Netherlands, field-grown herbaceous perennials, you run a risk of having this weed introduced. It's called keek in Europe. We call it creeping yellow cress in the United States. Spreads by roots and produce just a 1 centimeter piece of that root can reproduce new plants. Amelia is one that is already in the United States, from Florida to Ohio. Not widespread in the industry yet, but it's going to be because it is very common in a lot of liner production nurseries, and is somewhat tolerant of a number of herbicides. So learn to watch for these things that are moving from overseas. Most of these came from overseas, from the Orient Asian hawksbeard, thickhead. I've seen this in liners that have been shipped out of the deep south. Tuffweed, we've got that right here in the Carolinas. It's becoming more and more of a problem, especially now that the Roundup resistant crops are dealing with difficult to control weeds like duckweed, which is not controlled by glyphosate. So it's becoming more widespread. Okay. What can you do about that? What can you do about these liners coming in infested? Obviously, inspect those liners when they arrive, and again a couple of weeks after they've been potted, when you've got good growing conditions, and see if they have new weeds coming up in them. Because obviously the supplier has weeded them before they ship them to you. So you need to look at them a couple of weeks later. When you've got pots and substrate, make sure you store them in areas that are fairly clean. Okay, so that you're not introducing weeds with those liners. And consider producing your own liners. I've seen a lot of nurseries are moving back to